you know. So I learned individually. I learned through a teacher's instruction, yes. But then whatever is given to me, all right, I think that I couldn't. Sometimes I go out of the class and I thought I have not learned anything. But when I went to sit down and reflect, or I have my textbook, read that subject, then, you know, it comes to me, oh, this is what the teacher is saying. Okay. Oh, this is where I would know. So, you know, and with colleagues, with my own peers, that's my own learning style. Okay. And you spend a lot of time, you know, because sometimes a concept you have to revise. Okay. It takes a lot of patience to learn. You can't just sit down and say, well, I just browse it, you know everything. No. You have to apply yourself. Okay. The time that people spend on books or on their study material is very important.
So what would be your advice to present-day students in relation to that?
Well, my advice to present-day students would be, I mean, just look at the time that you have at your disposal. Okay. You spend from this hour to this hour to school. All right? How much time do you spend on drinking attire? How much time do you spend on watching football? And how much time you engage with your study material. Okay. Because everybody in life has a major thing to do. When you are a student, your major activity is learning. That's to be able to engage in things that you can understand new things and be able to do things better. Okay. So, but if you look at your time and you find out that on your own, you spend very little time with your study material, that is not a student. Okay. Okay. All right? So that's my advice.
Yes. Yes, Mrs. No.
I was going to say his idea that his idea that he's trying to explain to us is very useful. When children are trained that way, when they go into higher studies like universities, they can do their work on their own. I find most students now, when they get into university, they find it very difficult because they've not been used to learning on their own. Okay. All the time, it's just learning like parrot. But I think his idea, if only that is put into all schools, especially in the secondary schools, you will find that children will do better.
What is your advice to students and parents with regards to studies, private studies after school hours?
Well, my advice to parents is that they must make sure that their children do or go to studies if they are not able to help them. In the evening, they should be encouraged to read for pleasure. Because when it doesn't matter 15 minutes, half an hour, but they should encourage these children. And one thing about reading, once you get into the habit, it's just like eating food. All the time you would like to have a book, you would like to read. One thing I must say, if I have any success in education, in my private school, is because reading is my hobby. All my children love to read. Once they can read, they can do a lot. They can be in groups and they can research and they can do all these things. But if they cannot read, what can they do?
So reading for pleasure is very important?
Very important to enjoy it. Okay. It's very, very important, and teachers must encourage their children to do it.
Okay. What's your own take on that too? Your advice on parents and teachers in relation to private studies after school?
Well, for students, my advice would be let them apply themselves, let them program themselves, let them know that the beginning of studies is right there in the classroom. When they are in the classroom, let them be very attentive and make sure that they grasp anything that is coming from the teacher. So whatever they do outside is just to reinforce what they have learned in class. And they must be encouraged to get into independent learning. Doctor said it just now. Now, you know, technology is there. You can learn for yourself, and for the teachers, my advice is, yes, they're doing very well. You know, they are ready to offer their services. But let us put the child at the center of everything. Let us ensure that what we need to teach in the classroom, we teach it. And not to hoard some of the things that they teach in the class and teach them for studies. I think that's my advice to them. And for parents, I I would want them to encourage their children and let them know that organized studies like what is happening now is not the only way that students can learn. And they must be very, very careful, because what I'm seeing is that a lot of people come round in compounds and ask that they can be study teachers. And for some parents, they don't even know what those people teach their children.
Certainly.
So, and you pay a lot of money. And this is why we really need to look at these private studies. I'm not saying it should not happen, because it's another source of income for teachers which they also need. But then I think we need to regularize it in the sense that it's not every Tom, Dick, and Henry who is a teacher who can conduct studies. And parents are paying so much for these private studies. And interestingly, somebody would come and say, you know, I would want to conduct studies there, and you pay sometimes even $400 or $500 on things you know they could have even learned in the classroom. And I think we need to look at this.
Okay.
We must first, you know, demystify the issue of studies. Okay. It's not only limited to giving instructions by the teacher. The child can study independently. The child can study in a group, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Dr. Bram, what's your own take on that?
Well, I quite agree with Ms. Andur on that. I think children need time, like from school, like some of us from school, we went to Dara, that's also important. We need time for ourselves. I think parents, we need to have books for our children. We need to be interested. Because as a parent, even if you engage your child, ask him, well, can you read for me? Or as a parent, read for the child. Okay. I'm sure, Ma would, you know, would have to say something about that. But I mean, if people, whether you are illiterate or not, whether a child is literate, whether a parent is literate or not, okay, you can say, okay, today what have you done? Yes. If a child knows that you ask him questions about what he or she have done, he would definitely, okay, now can you read this for me? So these are things that we can do. And definitely, for me, I mean, my own children, I encourage them to study on their own very well. They can go to school when there is remedial programs, they can go into, but definitely I think that time the child has for him or herself, is very important. And homework, like homework can also be programmed. Children can be programmed in such a way that they have homework to do at home. That actually is also, very important.
Mrs. Now, what is your final word in this discussion, study skills?
Parents must encourage their children to study. And I'm advising parents to have a little corner in their houses where they have books, a small library, to encourage their children in the evening to sit down and read for pleasure. And as he was just saying, it will help them to make research. By the time they get to the top, the learning will be very easy for them.
Okay. Thank you. Well, viewers, that's all we have for you in this episode of the Education Forum. Till we come your way next week.
Wande jang nga jang weesuwul man ngay bindalal sa bopp man ngay